woke up this morning, was eating breakfast when I heard a bunch of sirens running through the neighborhood. It sounded like fire trucks. And then I got a call from a customer who claimed a squirrel had crawled in through the front of his air conditioning unit there, crawled up in the back, and had been making a nest back in here behind the shroud. Had just tons of leaves, and then started chewing through the ductwork there and the insulation. Had gotten inside that duct with and then carried all his leaves and insulation, started chewing on the wires and scratching the interior insulation here, and just pulled his nest inside here. And then when the unit did kick on, the fan there pulled all those leaves and everything into the fan. You can see it's quite filled with leaves and insulation in that fan there. But then the fan blows it into the heat exchanger compartment. And would you believe it catches on fire? Look at the bottom there. That's all ashes and stuff. And all the insulation and leaves and ash then cakes onto the evaporator coil. It's about a quarter of an inch or half an inch of just leaves and insulation and fur is caked onto that evaporator coil. And then down there at the bottom, it catches fire, being too close to the the heat exchanger. And all the smoke goes into the house and fills up the entire downstairs with smoke, and smells like a campfire in the house. And so I've got to go out here. I've got to clean all that evaporator coil off and clean all the soot. And then down here, the squirrel even chews through the wiring harness here, and you can see several of the wires were clean cut through there. He just chewed right through those wires there. I've got to check out the fan and the capacitor, make sure this is all working still, and clean out this compartment below at the bottom. The insulation on the bottom is all chewed up as well. So I've got to clean off this condensing coil. I got to get all the soot and everything out. And then I've got to come in behind the shroud here. I've got to splice in some duct here, reestablish that duct work, and attach that shroud back, and clean out the blower cabinet. Here's the unit with the fan out. You can see where the fire had started back in on the heat exchanger there. Got a little bit of cleanup in the bottom below where the fan was, where some of the insulation is torn out. And rehook up all the wires, and then we can seal this side back up. So here are just some pictures of the fan with the leaves all in it, and the insulation, leaves in the compartment, the debris on the coil, ashes in the bottom, more debris. Look at all the leaves underneath that fan. It was just packed in there. And there's where all the stuff was that was in the fan that had to been pulled out. And this was all off of the evaporator coil. Now it's all cleaned up there. Just got to clean out a little bit of ashes left. So here's the motor all cleaned out. You can see by the wheel spinning, pretty clean. All cleaned out from the underside. That is the underside where all this insulation and leaves were stored in there. So we see the little burn mark left on the top of the fan there, and get it all cleaned out around the motor now. So we can reinstall this, hook it back up, check the capacitor, make sure it's still working, and patch those wires that were gnawed through, and we should be ready to turn it back on, except for the duct. Alright, we got the blower compartment all cleaned up, patched up the insulation, reconnected all the wires, took out the chewed wire, tested the motor, tested the capacitor. Everything's ready to go, and this compartment is ready to be cleaned up and closed up.
I don't wanna take the one thing that I love to break.